you because I've never gotten to meet you yet, and I've been a huge admirer of your work since the handful of years that you guys have kind of burst onto the scene with such a big impact. I think there's an interesting backstory to what your family connection might be to Barbie and Mattel. I wondered if you might start by sharing that.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Well, our father, who's like sitting right there, raise your hand.
Oh, wow. Dad, stand up. Say hi, everybody. Wow. And mom, too. Hi, mom.
And my mom is sitting there, too. Our dad was a carpenter at Mattel when we were kids, and we never saw him, like literally ever. But he worked like.
So Barbie's made out of wood. What am I not getting here?
He was a carpenter. He built sets.
Sets. Yeah.
At Mattel, and he would leave at like 4 a.m. and come home late at night, and sometimes he would like. I thought it was really cool that he worked there because he. Sometimes he would come home with scraps from Barbie sets that he would find in the garbage. And so like in dumpsters, sometimes he would like pull out like Barbies that had been thrown away or like pieces from sets. There was this one thing that he gave to me. Maybe he shouldn't have been taking stuff, but he was. There was one
I think it's okay now.
It was like an apple, like a little plastic apple that was like pink, this like bright pink apple. And I just thought it was really cool. And I have it still somewhere in my house. But
like a tiny Barbie size?
Oh, like an apple-sized apple.
Oh, apple-sized.
Like a fake plastic one. That was like part of some set. Yeah, for years that was it. And he, one time found an unopened Barbie, like holiday Barbie or something, in like the garbage or something. I got that for Christmas. It was awesome. Yeah.
So Barbie like had a certain mystique to you, even if like Barbie's more like my era or maybe even older when it was like super cool, because there were other things that came in and kind of replaced it.
Nothing, honest to God, nothing has replaced Barbie. Like
for you.
I really don't think it's ever been replaced. I think there's been new things. I think like I loved like Monster High dolls. That was my shit. But like Barbie was always Barbie. It was never like, who cares? It was so. I think that's it's kind of rare for things to be so adored and beloved and remain that way for generations and generations and generations. Because I didn't know. I had no idea Barbie was like an old thing. I was like, oh my God, this is my favorite thing in the world, and I loved all my Barbies, and I treated them like gold. I loved Barbies so much. And then my mom would talk about Barbies and her Barbies when she was a kid, and I was like, wow, like this is a lifelong, I don't even know. It's really amazing the way that it has affected us all, I think.
So it came about that Greta reached out to you, or you heard about the project and said we'd be interested.
Yeah, they'd wrapped principal photography, and I, like everybody else, had kind of seen like TMZ photos of Margot and Ryan on rollerblades at the beach, and I'd been like, damn, okay. We're huge fans of Greta and Noah, and yeah, one of our team members, Paul, was having a meeting totally separate from us with Inan at Mattel. And Inan at this point was like, oh.
And Inan Kreitz, who's the CEO of Mattel,
correct.
Right? Yeah.
And Inan was exclaiming about how excited he was about Barbie, and he told our team member Paul about like, Mark is doing this soundtrack, and it's going to be amazing. And the people that work with us champion us and are great. And he was like, well, you don't have a Billie song. And he was like, could we get a Billie song? And he was like, I'll call him. So we got this call out of the blue of like, do you want to maybe talk to Mark about doing something for the Barbie movie? And I was like, yes, of course.
That's kind of crazy that it would come through the CEO of Mattel. It's not usually part of the
not usually.
Team. I mean,
no, for sure. So
yeah.
we got really lucky. And then we were put in touch with Mark, and then Mark put us in touch with Greta pretty quickly. And she was very adamant that we see the movie if we were going to write anything. Which again, like all of this, like I talk about this a lot, but we feel like fans who snuck into the back of like the party. And so the idea that we were going to get to see some rough cut of the movie 6 months before we would otherwise get to see it was enough to us that we were like, that's sick. Even if they don't want us to make a song, that's awesome. So we got to go see, it was the first 40 minutes assembled, and then several scenes, America's amazing monologue, the Now Feel scene with Ruth, I'm Just Ken. We got to see some really pivotal moments in the film.
So you mean the dance scene?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we got to see these things to kind of take home with us and be inspired by. And we just loved it. We just loved the film. We were super moved by it. And we wrote the song the next day. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you guys write together? Does one of you write the words, one of you write
It
the
is
music?
really, at this point, you know, we've been working together since I was 13 and Finneas was 17. And those were our ages when we made a song called Ocean Eyes and put that out. And
Amazing.
it's
13,
really,
13.
13 and 17 is ridiculous. But it's changed a lot over the years, but I think at this point it's very 50-50. We are so, you know, when we talk about a song we've written, it's like hard to remember who wrote what because it's very equally, we're equally contributing, I think, at this point, which is really, really fun. It's really amazing. I feel like, I mean, you know, I write on my own too, and Finneas writes on his own, but when we write together, it's really, honestly, like nothing else, and I can't really recreate it. It's special, and I think that when we're inspired, like when we were, you know, the day after we saw Barbie, we were just like filled with, you know, I've said this a gazillion times, but like we hadn't been creative at all, and we were not coming up with anything, and we just completely like stumped. We just had nothing, not about Barbie, like in general. We were trying to make this album, and we were like, we have no ideas, we're not good anymore, this and that, and you know, saw Barbie, and 24 hours later, we had been working that day and not coming up with anything and not being creative, and I was like, dude, I'm going home. We should stop. And then just Finneas was like, well, let's just take a crack at this Barbie thing. And I remember being like, bro, what? You think after this whole months of not creating anything and this whole day of sitting here for 6 hours and coming up with absolute garbage, we're gonna come up with an incredible Barbie song that's gonna be like good enough for this movie? Like, absolutely not. And we wrote it in like under 2 hours. Yeah, kind of amazing to
So you saw the footage, and you just went back to work like your normal work. You had a session, and were working on an album.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, you're like, well, let's try this.
Mhm.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Greta had said this thing when we were first speaking to her, where she said, you know, what are you working on right now? We said, we're supposed to be working on Billie's next album. And she said, oh, great, well, then this can be the way that you procrastinate. And
That was awesome.
I think
Glad she said that.
we felt so daunted by how little progress we felt we were making on the album at the time that I was like, oh my God, like we don't need to procrastinate. We can't even get the album going. But she was completely right. Like it was such an astute. She said, she was like, that's what I love when she was like, when I'm working on a big project, I love a little distraction to work on. It was really smart.
It's really true, but because that was going to be one of my questions I was going to ask you guys, is that why you do movie scores, because of course you wrote the song for James Bond, Time to Die as well. Like, what is appealing to you about that, given that you have your own very strong creative voice that you put out there that is an expression of, you know, the inner you and just what you guys do together, which is so special.
Yeah.
Then if you collaborate on something like a film, like you've got all this other inputs and, you know,